This regular Medicine Hat City Council meeting of January 15th, 2024 is called to order at 6:30 p.m. I will now read our land acknowledgement. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships to the land. We will now have a moment for prayer or reflection. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, adoption of previous council meeting minutes. We have regular meeting of City Council, December 18th, 2023. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will adopt the minutes as presented for the corporate record. Now we have item 6, adoption of the agenda. Any amendments? I think we have one amendment to move. Oh, Councillor Hirsch?
I would like to say some comments under the council announcements, or is that
Yeah,
what you were gonna?
well, no, we'll
Oh,
do
the
that
next
right
section?
after the,
Thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Robbins, did you have an amendment?
I did, and I wanted to move 2 items up to 2 different places. So item 9.2, if that item could be moved up, I leave it to you, Mayor Clark, to determine. 9.2, and both items immediately following. Well, that doesn't make sense because item 9.2 is what I want to move up. So it wouldn't make sense to put them after 9.2 because that's exactly what I want to move up. So
My understanding was that we were looking to move 11.1 until after item 9.
okay,
So 11.2 would follow immediately after 9.2. So that, because we have several staff members here for that one.
right. I thought we had also wanted to move 9.2 up.
Well, we only have the consent agenda and some councilor announcements before that one.
But we could move it before 9.1.
Okay,
So if we could do 9.2 before 9.1 and 11.1 before 9.1, I think that would structure the meeting in a helpful way for staff and public.
so I'm just looking for a pen here, my apologies. So we want to do 9.2, 11.1, and then 9.1? Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
All right, we'll vote on the amendment. That's unanimous. Any further amendments? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted as amended for the corporate record. Item 7 is councilor announcements. We have several councilor announcements this evening. We'll start with 7.1, introduction to new city planner, City Manager Mitchell.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to introduce our new city planner, John Popoff. And Managing Director Bohan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, City Manager Mitchell. Today is, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to introduce to you our new city planner and director of planning and development. John joins us today, his first day with the city, and most recently from the town of Cochrane, with relevant and important experience with previous municipalities prior to that. This morning, John and I had a great discussion about the future of the planning department here at the city, and I was so pleased with something he said. I wrote it down. He said, "I have a passion for building great cities," and I can't think of a more appropriate introduction to John. And thank you for joining us tonight, John.
Welcome to the city, John.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm looking forward to working with you and with your amazing administration that achieved some incredible results here. And thank you for the incredible welcome.
Thank you. Next on the councillor announcements, we will hear from Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks, Your Worship. As Chair of Energy, Land and Environment Committee Chair, I'd like to make some prepared statements. Obviously, the impact of our cold weather did raise some questions both within the community and the media, and certainly I just want to kind of reiterate some of the great things that we did. On Saturday, January 13th, all of Albertans received a province-wide emergency alert to limit electricity consumption. It is not uncommon for the Alberta Electric System Operator, also known as AESO, to issue alerts to electricity providers and on their website and communication channels when the Alberta grid is under graduating levels of stress. To our knowledge, this was the first time a critical emergency alert was issued publicly through television, radio, and mobile phones, which raised the level of alarm in our community and across the province. We've got two different streams within our utility, both generation and distribution, and I'll speak to both. The local impact to the generation department. The City of Medicine Hat is tied to the provincial grid and was in communication with AESO throughout last week and the weekend due to the extreme weather creating record consumption levels. The AESO has jurisdiction in these circumstances and can technically direct City of Medicine Hat to reduce our local load in order to stabilize the provincial grid, just like they can with any other provider. However, this weekend, GenCo was able to satisfy all the electrical needs of our community and also send electricity to the grid, so it would be unlikely AESO would direct us to implement rotating brownouts locally. Medicine Hat is arguably more protected from intentional outages due to provincial risk than other parts of the province, thanks to owning our own stable and reliable generation assets. That being said, Hatters cannot ignore or be complacent when events like this occur. Less load locally still amounts to less load provincially. I can confirm that the city used all commercial avenues available to reduce load in Medicine Hat and send power to the grid. We are proud to be able to help our provincial neighbors in times of need, both from our investment into assets that allow us to meet our local needs with the possibility of exports, but also from our proactive maintenance and operations of the assets to ensure they're working well during times of need. And certainly the last 4 days would have told us that. Kudos to electric and gas utilities and operational staff who were out all weekend, morning and night, in very extreme conditions, including our 2 off-site and outdoor turbines, units 16 and 17, to ensure our assets are ready at all times. And I think we take it for granted, certainly I did when I looked out the window and I just gave myself a little shiver, and we don't think too much about the people that are doing what it takes to make our city work and have the ability for us to take things as granted as little as turning on a light switch. So again, kudos to everyone. So the local impact to distribution, the City of Medicine Hat did not experience any issues or hotspots on the electric distribution system throughout this extreme cold spell or the duration of the grid alerts. The report a problem page on the city's website lists emergency phone numbers for any utility service issues. Those are the end of my prepared comments, but just again, kudos and thanks by on behalf of the citizens of Medicine Hat for all the efforts of those involved to make sure our electricity is reliable and certainly safe for us. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Hirsch. It was indeed gratifying also to know that not only were our local needs met, but we had the ability to help out the rest of the province in their time of need. Next on the councillor announcements is Alison Van Dyke.
Thank you. I just have a few thank yous. So as we come to the end of this cold snap, I would like to thank those in our community who worked so hard to make sure that our unhoused neighbors were sheltered indoors. I'd especially like to thank Medicine Hat Community Housing Society and the Medicine Hat Police Service, along with shelter providers and other social agencies that provide supportive care. We are in an enviable position, as mentioned, in the province, in that even when the grid is under pressure, as we saw multiple times throughout the weekend, we continue to have a stable self-supply of power. And I want to particularly thank the workers in electricity production, as well as our gas and electrical distribution divisions, who maintain our systems to make sure that we have heat and power throughout these cold winter days and nights.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Dyke. The work of the police and Medicine Hat Community Housing Society to find and to locate and help all of our unhoused residents was truly heroic, as was the work with the energy distribution. So cold out. Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, thank you for the opportunity. Speaking of the Medicine Hat Police Service, January 13th marked 125 years that our Medicine Hat Police Service was founded, 1899. That is the beginning of the Medicine Hat Municipal Police Service. The community at large, and certainly the service, had the opportunity to celebrate, and rightfully so, 125 years with a regimental parade that occurred last Thursday at the Cypress Centre. It was wonderful to attend that with Councillor Hirsch and myself as members of the Police Commission, with the other commission members and the public at large. Many retired members were there, which was wonderful to see. One of whom I recall had retired 40 years to the day prior to that. So he was, there was some commendations made about him. And then we had our current membership, of course, which is not just the police members themselves, but the community civilian members that work tirelessly on behalf of all of us. And then, of course, the aspiring members. So many, there was a long parade of wonderful members dressed to the T and greeting everyone as they came in. And it struck me that they must be there in some special capacity, and they certainly were. They were some of the new recruits that are aspiring to become full-time members of our service. So just an incredible opportunity. 125 years doesn't come very often, and certainly great speeches by members past, current, and of course the parade itself. So on behalf of the Police Commission and the Council, we certainly congratulate Chief Murphy and the inspectors and all the members, both all the service members and the civilian members, on 125 years.
Any further councillor announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone on council have items that they would like to pull from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none. Can I get a motion?
I move to accept the consent agenda as it stands.
I'll second.
All right, so we will vote on receiving the consent agenda for information for the corporate record. That is unanimous. 9.2, community vibrancy, 9.2, community vibrancy grant distribution. I think we have some people waiting outside for this item, and since it got moved, Not sure if they're, oh, looks like they're coming in now. So, I think we'll put this one over to City Manager Mitchell to give some background. Or Managing Director Brian Stouth? Okay.
Sorry, I was like, wait. Managing Director Stouth, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. In front of you is a council report in regards to distribution of community vibrancy grant funding. Specifically, there are a couple items within the recommendations pertaining to Canada Day celebrations and also to also an increase of funding for Spectrum. So we're in an enviable position. At one point in time, we had a lack of folks that were interested in trying to host Canada Day celebrations, and now we've got two groups in our community that are interested in hosting Canada Day celebrations. That will cause us to ask council for an increase in funding from the council operating reserve contingency. We are asking for $40,500 in additional funding for the community vibrancy grants. We are looking at a distribution of $57,000 in one-year festival grants. We are asking for a reclassification of the Beat the Heat Festival from a two-year festival to a one-year festival, with that being the goal of next year. Moving to bullet number 4, to revisit community funding framework for festival and event funding distribution in the community. And that in particular would consider an alteration to the current community funding framework to make Canada Day an RFP festival celebration with locked in and guaranteed funding for a number of years. But that recommendation remains to come forward. Thank you.
All right, so before debate, we'll need a motion to get this item on the table, if that is the will of council.
I'll make a motion slightly amended from the one that's in the agenda, or in the recommendation, I should say. So I move the council approves the $40,500 in additional funding for 2024 community vibrancy grants, 1- and 2-year festivals funded through council's operating contingency. So an increase in budget for festivals this year is what I'm saying, coming from council's operating contingency. A distribution of $57,000 in 1-year festival grants. We dealt with 2 years in December. The motion I'm not making is with respect to C, the reclassification of Beat the Heat from 2-year to 1 year. I am, however, going to also move that we direct administration to revisit the community funding framework for festival and event funding distribution in the community with respect to Canada Day RFP process.
I'm happy to second that amendment.
All right, thank you. Any speakers? Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Robbins?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, I should say tremendous thank you to the Community Vibrancy Board, who went through each of the applications and approved the funding and spent some considerable time really debating what vibrancy means in the community and how it comes from these festivals. And so that work is not easily done, and they certainly put a lot of effort into it, every one of them scoring the different festivals against a matrix that had been approved by council, but someone has to do that work, and they did a tremendous job at it. With respect to the idea of an RFP for Canada Day, in discussions of what came out of the one-year grant applications, it seemed like there's some additional opportunity to explore different types of activities on Canada Day, not having a preference of one over the other. I think 2 festivals on Canada Day is a tremendous opportunity for Medicine Hat to go from one to the other, perhaps back to the first one if they should choose. I certainly stand by personally the Beat the Heat Festival December 18th decision that we made and the funding that was applied in the budget. So that's why I've not referenced the reclassification, but thank you.
Counselor Sharps?
Thank you, and through the chair, first, very grateful to Councillor Robbins for not putting subsection C of that motion in. I think the Beat the Heat Festival needs to stay the way it is right now, and they can choose how they put their application in going forward. And I think the fact that council made a decision December 18th to ensure that Beat the Heat was funded to do a great Canada Day celebration, and I believe that this council is going to stand by that decision 100%. I'm not going to speak for anybody. I believe that's what we want to do. I will personally support that. I think that this particular association has really done just a crack-up job in this community. You are young, you are driven, you have good values. I've been nothing but impressed with everything that you do, and that needs to be, you need to be commended. And commendation means we don't go back on our word. So I am very grateful for everything you've done. I think you do very well. I also want to thank administration for making sure that there's additional funding and proper funding for Spectrum. You know, there's always a mix of opinions when it comes to different festivals, but I'm a big believer that as long as the people are showing up and telling us that they want those festivals, that's who's telling us what's important. So if Spectrum is getting, you know, 30,000 people on that first weekend in June, our community is telling us what they want, and that's our job to listen. So thank you, administration, for making sure that they are properly funded as well.
Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you, and through the chair, echo the comments of Councillor Sharps. Obviously, it is a great event, and it is nice that we do have options. And we can't forget that the Medicine Hat Exhibition and Stampede did stand up a couple of years ago and say, listen, if you've got nobody to do it, we'll do it. So I'm glad that they're being considered in the mix of all this. So I think we have a transition that may be happening, but look forward to supporting this and the Stampede Board as well, as they have their own celebration potentially.
Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I appreciate Councillor Robbins' motion and amendment to that, and I support it. And I just wanted to say that this is quite a transitional year for this process and council's decisions around this, as we've gone with a new format on how to allocate money towards these kind of organizations. And I appreciate the various associations and community groups and people in the community, their grace while we work through this process. Hopefully we'll smooth the kinks out into the future, but we want to make sure that everyone who is hosting these large community events has the right resources that they need to be able to do it properly. So thank you to everyone who puts so much volunteer time and effort into these events. We wouldn't be the vibrant community that we are without them. Thanks.
Councillor Knodel?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I'm not going to say anything unique to what has been stated already, but as a addition to what Councillor Van Dyke said in regards to those who have put forth applications and plan to host events and bring the community together, it is greatly appreciated. And I'd like to recognize the group that's in front of us tonight that make it very clear that you care deeply about community and about each other, and you're a fantastic representation of what we hope to see as a vibrant group in our community, so thank you. Overall, I am happy to support the amended motion that Councillor Robbins has on the table, and feel that it's very important that we don't go back on our word and that we support the group that's in front of us tonight.
Councillor Hyder?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. I too will be supporting this. And I also would like to thank the Community Vibrancy Committee for going through all these applications. It is, as Councillor Robbins said, a time-consuming endeavor, and we appreciate your work. And I appreciate the work gone in from the Medicine Hat Skateboard Association and their application. It's, on a personal note, I have received some really nice thoughts and funds from these guys for my other job. And what a great group of young philanthropic people we have in front of us. And I'm happy that you're in our city. So thanks, guys.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, thank you. I echo comments have been made I don't want it to be lost on the fact that the Community Vibrancy Group, of course, as has been indicated, went through a rigorous process to allocate funds for stated purposes. One of the things we celebrated last time when we had this broader conversation was the depth and breadth of different festivals and groups and the initiation of some new ones that haven't been here before. But the tried and true staple ones like Canada Day being important to this community and certainly to this council. I appreciate the Skateboard Association's eagerness to rise to the occasion with Beat the Heat, extended festivities to grow what is a longstanding, very favorable and positive impact that they have, not only with youth, but the community at large, internationally as well. We have all read in the news recently. I certainly want to add, that staff's intention, and I'm not speaking for staff, but certainly our senior admin's desire to enhance the vibrancy grant funding to grow our festivities is appreciated. We ultimately make that decision. We will shortly, but I think their mandate and their thoughts were in the right place and are in the right place. And ultimately, it is up to council to make the decisions, but to uphold the grant funding that was given to Beat the Heat and to support the plans that they had, in particular around some of the specifics. And I think one of the things that maybe I'll end on is the community, the broader community conversation that will have to be had around the fireworks display, because that is something that I think is not being directly said here, but I certainly personally support Beat the Heat's ability and capacity to pursue that. But I know that in the end, what we will derive here is a community celebration that will be noteworthy. It will be another opportunity for the Skateboard Association to demonstrate time and time again their resolve to grow, their commitment, and the kinds of things that they can put on in our community, and the professionalism that they can do it with. And I know the community looks forward to that, and I certainly do as well. So I will be supporting this.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, Councillor Drumanowski kind of brought it up, what I was going to discuss. And again, I think it's been stated multiple times, but again, I salute certainly anyone that wants to step forward to put on something in this community that a lot of people would feel comfortable enough to attend. So whether that be Beat the Heat, Spectrum, there is an intense amount of preparation that has to happen in order to execute an event. So I certainly know that, I remember the Canada Day organizers, I asked them one time, like, when do you start the next Canada Day? The day after Canada Day. So it is an event that has to take a long time in preparation. So I think what we're trying to do here is certainly in a methodical basis is to certainly celebrate a lot of the events that are coming forward for Hatters, which of course we want to basically fund as much as possible, but we know we're in some constraints on funding everything. But that being said, the fireworks conversation certainly came up. So I do want to tip my cap to the Medicine Hat Expedition Stampede, who stepped up and did Canada Day, volunteered to step up and do it. That said, I think what we are running into now is other groups that are saying, hey, I'm kind of interested in that. And right now, I don't want, and I don't think the interested groups that want to do it actually do want to engage in a tug of war over it. I think one of the things that I want to ask maybe administration is what their thoughts are relative to fireworks. Everyone owns Canada Day. Everyone owns it. I think whatever you want to do in terms of celebration of a day, the only reality is the fireworks is a different angle. And when I had a conversation with Managing Director, he did remind me of the safety issue. Multiple fireworks in multiple locations is a challenge when it comes to executing it in a safe manner. And having said that, we know we're in a very dry spell in this part of the province this year and potentially the year that lies ahead. So that does give me some concern. As much as I want to celebrate, I want to do it in a safe manner. So I guess my question to Managing Director Stouth is what do you foresee? This is in reference to C, when it talks to revisit the community funding framework for festival, but more respect to the RFP process and what that looks like and what potentially, what's your thoughts in regards to that?
So I will just note that the document that we approved does indicate that $10,000 of the grant would be allocated towards fireworks that we did give. Managing Director Stouth?
Thank you, Your Worship. There was a few questions there, I think. So in regards to fireworks, I don't know of a time that we've had multiple fireworks displays, legal ones. We've had all kinds of illegal fireworks displays happening at the same time, but excuse me. Both of these groups would, of course, engage a licensed fireworks shooter and receive a permit from fire services. I would rely on our fire chief to just ensure that if we happen to have multiple fireworks displays occurring at the same time, that we ask our neighbors for a little bit of help from a safety perspective to ensure that we've got the safety side of it covered. So I think that was the fireworks question. Certainly, two fireworks shows in one night might be a new thing, but it may serve different demographics. It's an interesting concept. Regarding your second question, which was on where do we see an RFP going, is that correct, Councillor? So, interestingly enough, as I mentioned before, we're in the enviable position where we have two groups that are interested in hosting Canada Day celebrations, and we've not had that for some time, or maybe ever. We've had periods where we didn't have any groups that were interested in hosting Canada Day. So it's an enviable position to be in. And I think this is part of the growing pains that we're seeing just coming out of our new community funding framework. So we'll bring back to council a tweak to that where we are looking for a festival like Canada Day to have people put in a proposal for what they want to do in regards to Canada Day, including things like applying for federal funding for activities, listing the activities, so on and so forth. And then, we can have those evaluated and a decision made where we can lock in some consistent funding for a number of years. So the successful groups or perhaps groups, if they decide to co-apply, would be able to have security in what was ahead of them for funding for a reasonable period of time.
Just a supplemental. So appreciate it. And the fireworks kind of did relate to kind of the Canada Day as well. The rub for me is that it's difficult. And I am comfortable with the idea on an exception basis, maybe perhaps for this year to maybe have two different locations. I don't know where the rest of the council sits. I don't know, to be honest. Because I think at the end of the day, as I go back to my original comments that Canada Day is for everyone, I do want to revisit the idea from a safety perspective. And I don't know where the groups sit on all this. And you can't have Canada Day without fireworks, and you can't have I can't certainly celebrate Canada Day. I need to have the fireworks. I don't know where that sits. I do know from a safety perspective where that is. So it's a conversation that happened in the future, and maybe I'll just leave it at that. But I certainly appreciate and applaud groups that want to step up and celebrate within the community. So thank you.
All right, seeing no further speakers, I will just note, like, on the fireworks question or the festival generally, and this like goes for most festivals or things that happen in our community. I'm hopeful that, like Medicine Hat Canada Day Festival, that's where the Medicine Hat Exhibition Stampede also have a request in that they would, having allocated fireworks funding to the Medicine Hat Skateboard Association, that, if Medicine Hat Exhibition and Stampede wants to do fireworks, they would work collaboratively with the Skateboard Association, so that I think the intention for both parties is to, have the best Canada Day for the city as possible, and to, give a day to the community that's about celebrating Canada Day, celebrating the different cultures and Indigenous people of Canada, and doing that in a way that, increases the vitality and vibrancy of our community. So that is my hope, and we will now vote on the motion. That's unanimous. Moving on to our next item. We have Co-op Place. We're 11.1, operating model review of Co-op Place. The sponsor is Public Services Committee, and we have Director Lee Presteko, and she'll provide a presentation. And as they make their way down, you feel free to skedaddle, that's right.
I love the poster.
Welcome, Director Pruseko.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Actually,
Oh.
if
Managing Director Stouth, have an introduction?
I do have an introduction, Your Worship. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge Trampus Brown, our Manager of Guest Experience, and Aaron Nelson, our Manager of Culture and Events that are here with us. They are here to provide expertise and answer questions at the end of the presentation. I want to talk a little bit in a preamble about what you're about to see. Lee's going to do her presentation, and then I have a few closing remarks after the presentation, if council will indulge me. Just want to talk for a minute about the history on how we got here. Our event center opened in 2015. It was originally Canalta Center and changed sponsorship to Co-op and is now known as Co-op Place. Finished construction in 2015. In 2020, we were rolling into the throes of COVID, and also our contract with our third-party provider, SMG, which was later called ASM, that was coming to an end. We had some increasing deficits occurring at Co-op Place, which Director Presteko will speak to in her presentation, but we made a decision and a recommendation that back in 2020 that the City of Medicine Hat would take over operation of Co-op Place. So that has occurred. Our staff was put in place to move the building through the COVID period and out of COVID. We are now back to what I would call awful close to full steam at Co-op Place. We've got a full WHL season occurring, numerous shows, concerts, rodeos, motocross, different kinds of things that are occurring at our event center now. So we've had our first full year of operation where we could do some analysis and make a recommendation to council on whether we should continue to operate that as a city facility or go back out to market looking for a third party. So that work is done. I think you'll find the presentation interesting with a lot of great information in it. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee, and when she's finished, I have a couple closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. We're very excited to be able to share some of our successes and what we've been able to deliver to the community. We do want to talk today about our recommendation for the future operating model of Co-op Place. The goal of that recommendation is to drive financial performance and quality service delivery to our community. A quick summary, again, of what brought us here today. Co-op Place is our multi-purpose regional event center, serving primarily as a WHL venue, Go Tigers. When Co-op Place opened in 2015, the city contracted, as Brian said, SMG to operate the facility. SMG was later renamed ASM. In March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic led to restrictions on operations at Co-op Place, with most activity prohibited. At the conclusion of its contract with ASM, the city moved to assume operations of Co-op Place. That took place primarily due to three factors. There was a decrease in market support and attendance at the event center prior to COVID. Attendance had peaked in the first full year of operations in 2016. In subsequent years, attendance was anywhere between 7% and 18% lower. At the same time, financial investment required by the city to cover ASM losses was increasing. In 2016, net loss was approximately $778,000. By 2019, that loss had grown to $1.28 million, an increase of 64%. Finally, there were many unknowns around COVID. When would restrictions be lifted? Would people be comfortable returning to indoor venues for entertainment? And generally, what would the future of entertainment look like after COVID? With the decision made, administration committed to re-examining how the facility would be operated with a focus on future sustainability and service delivery. In March of 2021, management reorganized operations to maximize resources between Co-op Place and the Esplanade. In doing so, the city endeavored to provide a consistent patron experience across venues, better coordinate activity across facilities, become more attractive to promoters, and offer additional programming and opportunities. In June of 2022, the last remaining restrictions were lifted. The 2022-2023 WHL season was the first that was unhampered by pandemic restrictions. Using that as a baseline, staff were able to complete a quantitative and qualitative analysis, and here we are today. So why is this important? This work has a direct link to several of City Council's strategic priorities, including service orientation, community wellness, and resilience and sustainability. Simply put, we are working to build a place that people want to live and visit, a place that is vibrant and vital, where businesses want to locate and can prosper and have the workforce they need to do so. The evaluation conducted involved a number of dimensions. How did revenues, expenses, and bottom lines compare? What did attendance numbers look like, and what was the quality of those interactions? What services were being provided, including events and programs? And how did the end-to-end customer experience stack up? Our comparative periods each include 12 months, but are somewhat different. The ASM comparative period was for 2019 because all of the financial reports provided to the city were on a calendar year. The city period covers the 2022-23 season, that first season without COVID restrictions. Specifically, the period was from May 2022 to April 2023. The analysis involved many teams and a variety of expertise across the organization, and I'm very grateful for all of those who contributed to that work. So what did the analysis tell us as we compared a city-operated model to a third-party operation? We have a skilled and capable team, able and enthusiastic to deliver a variety of experience, be it on ice, stage, or dirt, large or small, all while planning for the comfort, safety, and security of those in attendance. The team operates in alignment and in adherence to Council's strategic objectives and the department's business plans. They don't do it for ego or for profit. They do it because they love what they do and they love serving this community. Synergies across the facilities are significant and lead to consistent customer experience. Marketing is enhanced through cross-promotion of events between facilities and joint marketing campaigns that lead to increased visibility and brand recognition, ultimately strengthening attendance. The use of a single ticketing platform provides for a one-stop shop for patrons, increasing ticketing security and reducing organizational costs. Purchasing food and beverage for both venues enhances purchasing power and provides abilities to share inventory. Having food and beverage staff at Co-op Place has allowed us to better serve Esplanade patrons and add new programming. Maintaining operation of both venues provides the ability to place the entertainment in the facility best suited for the audience and for the entertainer, thereby enhancing the overall experience for all parties. Major events can be better scheduled, eliminating direct competition between two operators operating two different venues. Rentals are also coordinated centrally, improving the ease of booking for shows, events, and conferences. This has also increased availability of ice time for community use. Our wonderful volunteers, who are just amazing, are engaged in both facilities. Patrons enjoy the warmth and helpfulness of our volunteers, and the volunteers enjoy giving back to the community. We also appreciate the opportunity to save on staffing costs and reduce the tax burden through the inclusion of volunteers in our operations. Utilization of staff between both facilities also results in reduction of management costs and helps limit duplication. Another advantage identified and leveraged through city operations of the facility is full risk management control. In a city-operated model, the city has direct budget control. A higher standard of asset management and maintenance is set and met. And when it comes to quality, staff have a commitment and desire to be responsive to the community and local stakeholders. Our staff are vested in relationships, including with our premium seating holders, our sponsors, advertisers, patrons, and our major tenants, the Medicine Hat Tigers. We do recognize that there may be advantages to having a third-party operator. Depending on the organization, they may bring greater experience and expertise to some aspects of the operation and have a larger corporate organization to lean on for corporate support. Again, depending on the organization and the numbers, type, and locations of facilities they have in their portfolio, a third party may have greater access to touring acts. And while transferring financial risk to a third party is often an attractive risk management approach, we believe transferal of anything more than a minimal budget risk to a third-party operator is unlikely without placing quality at risk. In fact, given today's market environment and the merger of various venue management companies, we know the field is becoming less and less competitive. It's unlikely that there would be any interest in coming to the Medicine Hat market without being financially incentivized to do so. Attendance is one of the quantitative measurables used in our analysis. We can see here the peak attendance numbers that I referred to earlier by ASM in 2016 and then the following decline. We can also see the impacts of COVID on the 2020 and 21 seasons, which lingered into the spring of 2022. I'm pleased to share the final numbers for 2023, which we did not have in your package as it was not available when the Public Services Committee took place in December. Rounded to the closest thousands, at Co-op Place, we saw 151,000 people in attendance. The Esplanade, 86,000, and in the community, just over 10,000, for a total of 246,795. These numbers surpass the 2019 year that we've been comparing to for ASM and see us actually moving towards the 2017 numbers. Even without the community numbers, the Co-op Place and Esplanade 2023 totals surpassed 2019. And head-to-head, the Co-op Place numbers for 2023 are up over ASM's delivery in 2019. If we look at the comparative period that we were using for the financial analysis, attendance surpassed all years noted here at 263,000, in large part due to the Together Again Festival, which we recognize is a bit of an anomaly. A financial comparison of Esplanade and Co-op Place operated by a third party versus both venues operated by city management was also undertaken. The comparative periods again, 2019, the calendar year for ASM, and May 2022 to April 2023 for full city operation. Those 2019 numbers have been adjusted in this table for inflation. The analysis shows full city operation resulted in approximately $445,000 in savings. This includes an increase in revenue without a proportionate increase in expenses. Cost per interaction is a key way we measure success. How many people are we serving for how much we're investing? Given the increase in attendance numbers and the decrease in costs, net costs, our cost per interaction has decreased by more than 15% compared to ASM. We are serving more people for less. A couple of notes, just as you look at some of the figures. Our carrying costs for the facilities combined, which includes maintenance, insurance, and utilities, are nearly $1.7 million. That's before we hire any staff or deliver any programs and services. 1/3 of those net costs can be attributed to Co-op Place. The other 2/3 come from the Esplanade, where we have a number of valued but non-revenue generating areas like collections and archives. Looking forward, a few factors and trends to note. The community has responded positively to new programming and events offered at the facilities and in the community. We've seen success in Art in Motion, Dining in the Dark, and Midnight Madness. Our attendance numbers are going up, and so is overall patron spending, with particular success at Co-op Place in the food and beverage realm. This fall, PBR, Cirque Musica, and Tom Cochrane were all very successful on the food and beverage front. Visiting WHL teams have also taken advantage of the opportunity to purchase on-site catering packages so that they can have a healthy and filling meal before they hop on the bus and head back home or to their next stop. We have welcomed new and returning touring acts to Co-op Place, including Bryan Adams. We are rebuilding important relationships with our promoters. We are seeing repeat rentals, including Medicine Hat High School graduation and Medicine Hat College convocation. We are very pleased that Jehovah's Witness Annual Conference will return again this summer to Co-op Place. We know that last year, hotels, restaurants, and retail stores saw an economic boom during this conference. We are challenged, however, to continue to perform at the same level within our existing staffing envelope. Our staff have worked exceptionally hard through the transition to take on Co-op Place operations and to streamline and coordinate processes, services, and experiences. We have done this with a limited number of new staffing positions, which is placing revenue and service at risk. A few examples for you. We have only one full-time food and beverage position, who is responsible for $1.2 million in sales and approximately 125 staff. On any given night where there's a Tigers game in the building, our food and beverage manager is responsible for 70 staff members. Should that individual become sick or choose to leave the organization, we would undoubtedly face service disruption. Our box office sales have tripled in volume and value, and staffing has not been adjusted accordingly. Our premium seating sales are valued at more than $600,000 annually, and we've been relying on temp hours to support those relationships. And finally, we've added a variety of new programming options without adding resources in that area. With a desire to see more activity at Town Square, our programming resources will be further stretched. That leads us to our two-part recommendation. We recommend the continued operation of Co-op Place by the City of Medicine Hat. This will allow the organization to continue to take advantages of the synergies between Co-op Place and the Esplanade, to better manage risk, and to realize continued financial savings of at least $181,000. We also recommend the addition of $263,000 in funding to cover operational expenses and add depth to our teams. This will allow us to protect revenue, reduce risk of service disruption, and maintain the increased service levels currently being enjoyed by our community. Thank you for the opportunity to share our successes and our challenges with you today. We are excited about what the future may hold. And with your permission, Your Worship, I'd like to pass the floor back to Managing Director Stouth for final comments.
Thank you very much, Director Prestako. Managing Director Stout, and please remain there. I have a couple of questions for you.
Thank you, Lee, for your presentation, and I just want to follow up with just a few closing comments. So if you noticed in the briefing note, there is indeed a $263,000 budget ask that goes along with this. But even with that, we're still maintaining savings of $181,000 over a third-party provider if we could get a third-party provider to bid in at that same level. And there is absolutely no guarantee of that. I want council just to be aware that when we took over the building from ASM, they had 14 staff members in there operating the building. Of course, they went away when the contract was terminated, and we did add 5.65 FTE to our community development staff to operate Co-op Place. We operated that at that level through COVID, which was fine, and now we've come out of COVID and ramped back up to a full steam scenario. Certainly, as Lee mentioned, on a Tigers night, having 70 concession and kitchen staff reporting directly to one beverage and food manager is a risky situation. We'd hate to be in a situation where we actually had to close concessions due to staffage shortage from our food and beverage manager, but that's how close to the line we are really running. With the 2.5 FTE ask, that does elevate the staff count that we've put into Co-op Place to 8.15 FTE. That's almost 6 FTE less than ASM was running. And that speaks to the dedication and the passion of our staff and the work and the passion that they've got towards their work. And it also shows us the efficiencies that we found operating 2 entertainment venues and where we can cross-reference and cross-use staff between the Esplanade and Co-op Place. So we think it puts us in an enviable position. I also just want to talk about timing. There's no doubt that in a perfect world, we would have liked to have this recommendation in front of council before a 2024 budget update, but it wasn't possible. We didn't have enough time after the end of our measurement and data collection period to assemble that data, analyze it, and put forward a recommendation that we were 100% confident in. We did bounce the data back and forth between community development staff and our corporate performance staff and myself. And we wanted to make sure that before we came to council with a recommendation that we were 100% confident in what that recommendation showed and said. So, but regardless of whether we'd have been ready in July or September or January or March, the number wouldn't change. So I want to thank Lee for the presentation and appreciate council's ear, and of course Aaron and Trampus are here with us, and as a group we're happy to address any questions that council has. Thank you.
I do have a few. I wanted to clarify, though. You said 8.5 FTEs just for Co-op Place? Because the reason I'm asking is it looks like the total between the Esplanade and Co-op Place is 9.55. And so would that mean that's just 1.05 FTE for the Esplanade? Or I'm probably misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think that perhaps you are. What we're looking for is a 2.5 FTE ask. We did have 5.65 that we placed into the building, and now we're moving up to 8.15 added staff. So the total that we've got now in these different positions, just these positions that are outlined, is 9.55.
Okay. So there would be positions in addition to this in the, obviously, working at that, to the Esplanade and Co-op Place. It's just particular to compare with the previous contractor. These are the relevant positions. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. So in both situations, there would have been operations staff that flooded the ice, converted the facility from ice hockey to rodeo to motocross to whatever. And certainly we have those operation people on staff now. Those are Parks and Recreation operational staff that we utilize in that facility. That's part of the $263,000 ask. We pay Parks and CDV pays Parks and Recreation $60,000 a year for those operational staff to make those changes in the building when we convert. We're already paying them. We've just never allocated a budget for it.
Thank you. Councillor Hirsch?
Just want to thank Lee for the presentation. Certainly, and kudos to city staff that, quite frankly, stepped in during COVID. You got an expired contract with ASM, which is at that point in time during COVID made 0 sense to renegotiate or extend. So many thanks to staff just stepping up. Although we idled it because of COVID, the city and staff emerged out of COVID and certainly didn't skip a beat when it came to a lot of the shows that were put on. Certainly, as I went around the community and didn't hear any feedback whatsoever in regards to the transition of city staff leading the charge. So in regards to the presentation, I just think, I looked at the financial analysis and I get it. It's tough to do the measurement. So I appreciate the fact that we're coming in very close on the ish world because, as you know, you just mentioned it, COVID, the event that we hosted that is a one-off. We had a huge conference that brought people to town, which was awesome, and they're coming back, which is a celebration. I want to reflect a little bit on this, and I don't take this lightly in the fact that we used to have a service provider that was private. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was around during the time when the RFP went out for the service provider. And I concur with Managing Director Stough's comments that maybe it's run efficiently because a lot of these, don't forget, a lot of these event coordinators want to come in and make a profit from which you recognize that we run things fairly lean and certainly you can reflect it in the financials. And quite frankly, and I'll be absolutely frank, we didn't have that many applicants. And you just said there's a consolidation in this world as well. That's prior to the RFP happening. So even during our watch, what used to be, now it was ASM and previously it was, sorry, Lee, it was SMG. So consolidation even happened during the watch. So, I'm a kind of a laissez-faire kind of individual when it comes to government, but in this case, it does make sense. And finances aside, because I think the delivery of our event and that building out there and the Esplanade is crucial, no matter who runs it. And I think the ability for those individuals related to those two assets are crucial. So kudos to Trampus, kudos to Aaron and their teams. A lot of what we need, and you mentioned it, Lee, is it's difficult, and I don't think it's to attract the right talent that makes sense for people to want to go and enjoy themselves is difficult sometimes, and I get it. But finances aside, I don't think we would get and if we did an RFP, I just think would be challenging. I'm just speaking frankly of getting people in there, to develop and do a great job that is far and above what you guys can offer, and for arguably a lower price or competitive price. So that being said, but I love the economies of scale. I love the ability of the synergy of the Esplanade and the event center in terms of what we can put together. The team themselves, you talk about FTE coverage and can be interspersed between the two. And one thing that I was a bit cognizant of, and I got feedback from city staff, was the care and the maintenance of the building during when the private operator maintained it. And I know you guys are being respectful, and I'm not out to look at anyone, but I think there's gonna be a level of pride, obviously, in terms of our facility that would and could save us money when it comes to the care and maintenance of the building. As you know, if you don't have any ownership in it, you just kind of use it and your contract's done and then off you go. But we've got people that are invested in this community, certainly with city staff, that certainly don't want to walk down that path where we run into some issues due to maybe unintended consequences of not maintaining it properly, and I'm trying to be respectful here. So with that, I'm very much comfortable with the city continuing on. That said, the hope is that obviously we do it in a competitive manner, makes sense for us to provide and do as much as we can for programming within that facility. So thank you for that, appreciate it.
All right, since it does seem like we're moving into discussion and debate, let's get the motion on the table.
Sure, I'm happy to make that motion at this time. I move the council approves, A, the continued operation of Co-op Place by City of Medicine Hat administration to leverage the successes realized in joint operations of Co-op Place and the Esplanade Arts and Heritage Center, and the addition of $263,000 to the 2024 community development budget to support staffing and services at Co-op Place and the Esplanade.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So I have lots of different written comments, but the first thing I want to mention is I think about the Viner Center and how making a decision to have an operator in Kirby was the best case scenario in that situation. But to piggyback off of what Councillor Hirsch has said, this makes sense in this situation. So I think initially I thought about what it would look like to take what I imagined as like Esplanade staff and support and spread it into Co-op Place. And I was hesitant, and this was, obviously, this is a thought that I had when that transition took place. But I love watching it be in our control and watching it become something that's just, to me, feels like Medicine Hat when you walk in the building. It's, I have made comments before about how much I appreciate the greeters at the Esplanade and now how they've spilled into other areas of service in the community, including the Heritage Pavilion and other areas that I interact with. So, and other community members, of course, interact with. I love that. I appreciate the opportunities that have been created and the innovation that I've watched happen, including catering and catering beyond the walls of our community buildings, and I think that's really fantastic. Applaud the synergy, responsiveness, and the capacity of this model as well, including tix.ca. I find it's an easy website to use, and it's nice to have. Truly, I think this part of the marketing is all in one place. So there's opportunities for youth that we as a municipality can offer to young people in our community. And two more comments and then a question. You've done a fantastic job creating variety and vitality and recruiting acts that I know are sometimes a step above what Medicine Hat has had in the past, so that's great. I've heard if I contrast, and not to create any friction about the prior model, but far greater community complaints before. So it's really nice to kind of see very little of that and have nothing but positive dialogue and conversation with the current model. I am curious in regards to the one FTE or the one however we deem that particular position with the plethora of staff underneath the food and beverage supervisor. Is there a reason why there isn't, and maybe you can inform me about this, why is there just one at the top and then no, like, middle level supervisors that could kind of support. Because if that, I understand if that one person's gone, then kind of the pyramid falls apart completely. So is there a way that that could be organized to better support leadership that doesn't require more people at the top? Or is there, maybe just educate me in that sense.
I appreciate the question, and I'm very grateful to hear your warm comments, so regarding our team, so thank you for that. Thank you all, the speakers, for that. We really need to put some depth into that team, and that can mean additional hours, certainly, so additional FTE, as well as the ability to attract those who have the skills and expertise to do the work. Most of those staff in that very large number are high school students, so not the depth that we need to have the stability, as well as to be able to attract the type of personnel that we're looking for, and to be able to give them the stability as well, so that they want to stay with us. We want to avoid that churn that we often see in a number of service industries.
Thank you. Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just have some questions, I guess, so I'll save my warm comments until I've heard some of the questions. So Councillor Hirsch brought up the new funding and, the budget amendment. So, or sorry, it was Managing Director Stouth actually commented on the fact that we didn't have time to get the funding in place before the 2024 budget amendments, because that was probably my first question, so you've answered that. And I thank you for that. So on that, I'm just wondering, with this asked increase, how much of the increase is just an expense, and how much and what is it going to mean to the taxpayer at the end of the day? What is the tax rate increase, what is the percentage of the funding that we will hope to realize by increased service and increased revenue through the business of running the two centers? So I got a few questions, but that's, I guess, the first one.
Go ahead, Managing Director Stouth.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair to Councillor McGrogan. A $200,000 ask for staffing in this case. I think in the city we use roughly $800,000 is equal to 1% tax increase. So you could take a look at this at being 0.25%. One of the driving things behind this ask for staff, though, is revenue protection, because if we have service disruption and lose that revenue, so we've got $1 million in food and beverage sales that are going on in CDV right now, and we've got, sorry, I forget the number of ticket sales that we've got. Those are all revenues, and part of the design for depth here is to protect that.
Okay, so thank you. So what you're saying is it is just a direct expense, and we're trying to protect the revenues that we're basically receiving now. Is that more or less how you're putting that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I do a follow-up on that? Wasn't there like a 100,087 was the net? So even after
$181,000 in savings, yes.
So that's savings, that's not net revenue.
The comparison with the additional $263,000 ask is a $181,000 savings compared to going out to a third-party provider.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. And I guess that dovetails into my next question, which have we went out and got an expression of interest to see if there is any interest in somebody running our facilities? And when I say facilities, we're now looking at the combination of the Esplanade and the Co-op Place, which I applaud. I understand that the historical and archiving situations may be somewhat different, but have we, how much have we investigated the possibility of having a third party similar to the Viner Center, where we engage with another party to run the events?
So we have not conducted such an expression of interest. As noted earlier, we know that that venue management world is getting smaller and smaller and less competitive. We're a very, very small fish in that market, and we would likely need to incentivize someone to come here. It is a little bit different than the not-for-profit world, certainly when we were looking at Viner and Strathcona Center management. Our experience, even our own experience with the venue management world, is we did see SMG turn into ASM, and we know that ASM is now merged with yet another company. So we do not believe that we would be able to entice anybody to come to Medicine Hat that would give us the same level of financial savings or quality of service.
Okay, thank you. So if I may, just a couple more questions. We mentioned, now this is what we say when I'm not sure the answer is, the public would probably be very interested in. We talked about an internal charges from parks of, was it $65,000, and that being added to the cost. So I think there's always a confusion about, well, if we already have the staff in place and we're using them to do this, and there's an internal charge, why does the taxpayer at the end of the day pay for that, if it's really just being absorbed by another department?
So in relation to that internal charge, we simply don't have a budget for it. So we're running a negative variance at this point. Those were costs that had not been built into the budget. So yes, Parks charges us, and we're running a negative variance in our budget. So we need to have some budget to be able to pay for that. It still is the same taxpayer, the same pocket. Right now, we have the service, we don't have the funding for it.
Okay, so there's another department then that is going to show a $65,000 increase in revenues. Where does that go? And I know that's probably not a question for you, it's probably a question for city manager.
They're already showing that in revenues. We just don't have the budget to pay them for it.
And one final question. So we talk about gauging customer satisfaction. How have we done that? And I'm not questioning that we have a more satisfied group. I experienced under the private model, I've experienced it with the new model as far as customer service, but what have we done to actually, I guess, put some rigor around, we know that our folks are more, our customers are more satisfied now than they were when it was ran by a third party?
Great question, appreciate that. So we know that folks in our community vote by where they put their dollars often. So they are coming to our events, they are paying for tickets, they're paying for food and beverage, and we've seen those numbers increase. We have talked about how we can improve or introduce measures like Net Promoter Score to be able to formally survey, gather that information, get ratings and rankings of how folks feel about our service. So we'll be looking to do more of that in the future.
Thank you for your patience and your responses.
Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair to Director Prestako. First of all, I have some similar thoughts to Councillor McGrogan in questioning different, where does this go and where does that money go, but we'll leave that for now. Great presentation. I've seen it through our Public Service Committee, and I appreciate it's very well done. I just had some questions. Premium seating, is that the $600,000 annually? Does that include the suites upstairs?
It includes suites, loge boxes, and our club seats.
Okay, so annually, that's what you're going to generate
In
from
revenue,
in
yes.
revenue from the seating. That's great. Of course, I applaud Trampus and Aaron and you guys for bringing in some acts, but of course the community wants more. How does that look for this upcoming year? For more entertainment and more shows and stuff?
Thank you for that question. So what we have been working off of the last year is a commitment to provide 6 large-scale entertainment acts up at Co-op Place, which may be a mix of on ice, off ice, on stage, on dirt. We're finding right now that that's the balance for us, where we're able to bring enough people into the venue to be able to make the entertainment profitable, to be able to provide the type and variety of acts that people are looking for. Appreciate that some may be looking for much more than that, but we recognize that the majority of our community actually can't afford that to come to regularly. We can host more than, if it's a full bowl performance, 7,000 people in Co-op Place, which is more than 10% of our community. And to expect to do that on a regular basis is really quite a challenge. So we're looking to find the right mix. We know that for some of the performers who come for our community, so we have Globetrotters coming up, that's a rental. They come back because they find it profitable. So we're looking to see some of those continue in our community as well.
That's great. Just a couple more things. Well done on the Jehovah Witness Conference. That was great for our community. Now, Memorial Cup, is that based on the owners of the team applying for that, or is that in conjunction with the City of Medicine Hat, or how does that work?
My understanding is that the owners do need to submit.
Okay.
We would certainly be very excited to support.
Okay, thanks, Lee.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Well, Your Worship, how do you follow up a Memorial Cup conversation? But I know there's been a lot of that in the community, so. I appreciate the presentation, and certainly, like others have said, I have some questions. And then maybe a quick comment. So just, I guess, specific to the additional FTEs that are being asked. So looking at, I guess, before I get to that, I mean, the whole idea in asking is born out of, for lack of a better word, necessity and/or creating some redundancy or backup in case, which you've covered off in some specifics. I'm trying to understand how the addition of coordinators, and I don't want to get into semantics or terminology, but coordinators sounds like somebody who, like a foreman, if I can use construction terminology. How does that role derive better service, more service, enhanced service?
I appreciate that. So foreman is probably not a bad scenario to compare to. We are looking to add depth. We want to be able to do increased planning and analysis, and there's a lot that sits on our current food and beverage manager's plate right now. We also want to be able to support the staff at front lines through development and day-to-day support in our activities. Coordinator, we still need to work with human resources to understand what that title might look like, but wanting to provide some depth, wanting to provide some structure, and be able to spread some of those responsibilities as well.
So just following up on that, so currently, as it indicates for kitchen coordinator and concession coordinator, it says the utilizing senior hospitality lead. So the kind of consequence of hiring a coordinator would be, well, we currently have a lead who's covering off these positions, so what new or what other services are they now? And this is not getting into specifics. I don't even know who these people are specifically, but now what are they doing? Because they're not doing the other jobs that now you're going to backfill with other people.
I appreciate that. And we'll have to revisit what all of those look like and how those hours are distributed and what those responsibilities look like for senior lead hands and other positions. But these will be at a higher level than what we've been expecting from our senior lead hands.
Okay, just if I can, Your Worship. So going back to some of the conversation around SMG and then ASM and as you indicated, venue management teams kind of collapsing into each other and kind of becoming less and less visible in the industry landscape. The whole part of the objective of today is the addition of, and kind of juxtaposed against the bigger conversation, which is maintaining the city as a management for these facilities and creating the argument for savings, et cetera, that will be achieved. And again, I don't know the answer to this, so it's not a rhetorical question or statement, but one of the premises is a savings or derive savings by going to this model or maintaining and enhancing some of the positions, but there'll be $181,000 savings. So I'm wondering, and the last point you made around 6 major events, I just borrowing that because it was something you just said, but my question was going to be, if I'm taking over the management of a facility, but I'm having less events, so there's static costs with management, we'll just say, or leads that are going to be there, but if I have less events, I'd have to have less concession workers, less beverage people, et cetera, and therefore I derive a savings equivalent to less events, which can, from the standpoint of optics, create a bottom line that looks more appealing, but yet, in the end, I've achieved less events, which the community, as has been indicated by others, is hungry for. And I say hungry for loosely because I know, times are tough and people are very conscientious about where their dollars are going, but that is a common thread that I have heard, and it's not a criticism, but people want more events. And somebody hears about this event, it's not appealing to them, but then the next event is appealing to them, and trying to be all things to all people is an impossibility. But I'm trying to understand the pro forma of the previous groups, or ASM, loosely against what is currently in place and what is projected to be in place. It sounded to me like there would be less events, and that, to me, has an automatic derived costing, less of a cost because you're having less events. You're not calling in the 70-odd workers, per se. There might be, again, the management piece that maintain. Help me understand, what is in lay terms, what is the public getting outside of that $181,000 savings? What are they getting from the standpoint of entertainment and entertainment value and opportunity?
I appreciate that. The number of events can really be variable, certainly, and not the definitive answer to the equation, if I could say. So typically with our events, we have revenue coming in and expenses coming in. If the revenue and expenses are matching, it's easy to deliver that event because it's not cost us any money. ASM, their pro forma suggested that after year 4, they'd be breaking even. And the expectation was that they would deliver somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 events a year, which included WHL hockey. What we saw from that effort to bring many, many events into our community was costing more and more money every year. So it's less about how many events there are in, and as compared to, are we bringing the right ones in, which allow us to generate a revenue and or break even. We're on the hunt for those types of acts and activities that will allow us to generate that revenue and or break even to provide that service to our community regardless of the number. We're starting from 6 and we hope to be able to work forward from there.
Thank you. Just lastly, so in comparison, it's the event nights, including WHL, would be substantially down under our current model. Would that be fair to say?
It is, yes.
Okay. So in the end, the fact of the matter is, we have. It sounds like, and I would agree, I've heard positive comments around operation and how people feel when they are going to the events, albeit there are less of them, and that's an important aspect to not be lost in this conversation. I said it last time, I think at committee level, I'll say it at the public level, so all our viewers on TV land can hear it too. I know in previous eras of these facilities, the dollar, where our dollar was, Canadian dollar relative to the American dollar, played a big role. I remember talking to some of the management at these facilities in the past, and they said when our dollar, albeit on the macro level, I'm not an economist, it does hinder us in some aspects, but when it came to our dollar being stronger, we had the ability to attract, quite literally, financially, other acts that we can no longer attract. Most, if not all of them, are paid in American dollars, and they demand or command a certain level, regardless if they're coming into the Canadian stratosphere or not, they want to be paid commensurate. So it's a difficulty, and I recognize that, and it's not lost on me. I am not frustrated. I'm concerned that we are yet again having to make an amendment, but I understand and I fully believe and trust that the timing was not intended, other than it happened the way it did. I'm not comfortable making yet again another budget amendment, but I will be supporting it because I believe in the totality of the conversation. We're on the right track and we're trying to do things the best way possible and create the greatest efficiencies in place. So I thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your answering my questions, and I will be supporting it.
Councillor Van Dyke? Oh, sorry, Councillor Van Dyke, Managing Director South has his hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to supplement on Lee's answer as we talk about finding the sweet spot for the number of acts and events that we bring in. We're in a situation, or we had been in a situation where we saw a third-party operator working on a performa to book those acts in, even to the point where they were oversaturating the market and creating an experience both for the patron and the performer that was less than optimal. And when we create those scenarios for the performers that are less than optimal, the viewing and the consideration of our venue and the rating of our venue drops as promoters think about, do we want to bring these acts into Medicine Hat? I can speak because I've witnessed the amazing effort that our folks like Trampus and Aaron are doing when they book a show into Co-op Place, and I see the work that they do to make the experience for the touring crew a very positive one, because when those people leave Medicine Hat and the touring crew and the performer have had a great experience, that ratchets up our standing as promoters look at us and say, no, there's a venue that we want to book back into. The other advantage that we've got in Medicine Hat that Aaron can work with is, so we have acts that are coming through Medicine Hat on a Tuesday night. We've got the ability, because we have the Esplanade, to say this is the right venue for us to book them in. We're not limited to a 6,000 or 7,000 seat facility that we either book them there or we don't. So we put them in a giant venue and they have a less than optimal performer experience because we can't fill it. But we've got that option with the Esplanade to utilize that opportunity to create the kind of experience we want to create for both the patron and the performer. And that's going to pay off for us over time. Thank you.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I just have a couple of thoughts to share. So I love efficiencies, and so this entire thing is fantastic in my mind of having the flexibility of staff in those positions and marketing and all those aspects be used jointly. I have experienced the high level of quality that has come from city staff operating both of those facilities. I'm a bit of I really notice when things are not well-maintained or clean, and I find that the city facilities, not just those two, but all city facilities are very well-maintained. You can tell that staff take real pride in the maintenance of these city facilities for the community. I think that's really important. It enhances the user experience when you're there. I also have kind of watched with interest over the last couple of years as we've kind of been coming out of pandemic restrictions and with city operations, like you've said, the synergies of bookings. And I've noticed more and more and more sold-out shows at both venues. And in fact, in November, I was at the sold-out Cirque du Soleil show with my daughter at Co-op Place, and there was a sold-out show at the Esplanade the same night of Finger 11. And so I can see that whoever is doing the determination of who's being brought into the city, they're working really well at figuring out what the community wants to see. I've noticed a lot of sold-out shows at the Esplanade especially too. And I think sometimes it could be easy to think, well, if you're having 3 sold-out shows at a smaller venue, maybe you should have put them in Co-op Place. But the ability to have multiple options for nights to attend for community members, I think is important too. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. This was a lot of data that was collated for this report. And I appreciate Managing Director Stouth's comments around not having it ready in time for the budget amendments, but I think it is important for us to have had this more full view of everything. So thank you for everyone's work.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair to Director Prestako, thank you very much. I've heard your presentation of public services, so if I wasn't zoning out, I was still listening to you, and thank you, Manager Brown and Manager Nelson for joining, and other staff I see are hanging out tonight. I'm just gonna make 3 comments, because I asked all my questions of public services already, but you had said earlier about making a profit from a show, and then you talked about rental, and there's so many different ways these shows can be booked. I found that really fascinating, to that whole area, to learn a lot more about whether we take the risk as a city or the promoter takes the risk. It's all very interesting to me. But you said profit, and I think, I just didn't want people to think that that was profit as in money going into a city bank account somewhere, but rather just to offset the expenses that we have at Co-op Place and the Esplanade. So I just thought I should clarify. I'm sure that's what you meant, but I thought I should say it. And I'm glad you didn't say 2 things today. So I like to see what happens in other cities. And there recently in November 2022, another city with a arena similar to Co-op Place put a $5 parking fee on, which is going to make them $500,000 a year. And so I'm very grateful you didn't come with a plan to balance the budget and make things better with some sort of parking fee, because that has certainly been very detrimental to that community. So thank you for not suggesting paying parking. No matter how much we would make, it's not worth it. And the other thing I appreciate is you haven't come here with a plan that you collaborated on together to use up all of the savings and say, well, we're the same as you've come with an efficient plan that continues cost savings. So while you're saying we're going to have improvements to service levels, we're not going to overreach or shoot for the moon. We're going to say, these are the service levels we need, and we will continue to analyze the data, and I always appreciate that. So thanks for all of the work to come up with these plans and proposal. Of course, I'm going to support the motion.
Councillor Sharps?
Thank you, and through the chair, I just had a couple of questions. First of all, thank you, Leah. But a quick question. I've heard a couple of times that the contractor, SPM, had 14 staff and we have 8. When they had 14 staff, we weren't paying for that staff, were we? Was that not part of their contractual arrangements?
The employees were employed by ASM. What we had to do at the end of the year was cover any losses that they incurred, which may have been staffing related.
And that was part of our agreement with them? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to say that I am struggling with this a little bit, just because I've never been fond of a city going into business. I feel like we take away from people trying to do business and come to the city. It's not that anybody's not doing a great job, because that is just not the line in the sand to me. I just feel like every time we do something that takes away from business growth, that we need to be careful. Like, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to achieve? So when I see this 14 and an 8, in my mind, it's kind of misleading, because the citizens weren't paying for that anyways. We had an agreement in our RFP, or expression of interest, that said, we'll make you whole at the end of the contract. So that would be a contractual thing that the city could have, in my mind, controlled. So I love everything that you guys do. I just think when, my mind, it goes to, I don't think we should compete with local business. Unlike everybody else, I am kind of struggling with the late budget amendment. I'm not going to lie. I'm finding that very difficult and a whole to swallow late budget amendments all the time. I've never lied about that. I've always said that's something that drives me crazy. So at this point, it looks like you have full support anyways. I'm not going to support this. Nothing personal. It's not that nobody's doing a great job. I can not support this particular motion and still support you. And I think sometimes people forget that.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you, and through the chair. So I can't support this at this time either. I think I was rubbed when I heard that in December we're already kind of looking for a budget amendment for 2024, and I'm just wondering if, and this data is great, but I wonder if it's just early. Have we really taken a proper sample size? Can we let this season play itself out, I guess the hockey season, and kind of work this into our 25-26 budget? I think that's where it should be appropriately placed, and again, I realize that I'm one of 9, but I do support the efforts, I support the passion. I do support the growth in the proper way of the facilities together. I love that piece. but I'm not ready to support it at this time. It's too early, in my view, not enough information and too many questions. Thank you.
Was there a No, okay. I have just a couple of questions. So the $65,000 that is an internal transfer, how come how come if it showed up as a revenue on the Parks and Rec budget, why did it not show up at, again, obviously it's net neutral because it's an internal transfer, or that's my understanding as well, but to the taxpayer, it's net neutral because it's just transfer internal, but we just weren't sure where we were heading at that time.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through the chair, we just have not had the opportunity to actually put the request for those budget dollars into a budget cycle presentation. When we were preparing the 23-24 budget, we were still working within COVID. And there were few and far between shows occurring there. And so Parks and Recreation has the staff. They're doing the work for CDV. They're billing CDV for it, so they are showing as a revenue, but what we're doing right now is showing an unfavorable variance in community development because we've never had the budget allocated for that $60,000.
But, sorry, that was sort of a given the whole time. Like, we knew that community development was still drawing on those resources of Parks and Rec. It just, to me, it seems like it should have balanced out. All the internal transfers should balance out to zero.
Well, they would have if the 23-24 budget for CDV would have included $60,000 for that line item, but it did not. It was a zero.
Okay, so I guess that's my question. Why was it zero if the Parks and Rec was obviously, it's in their budget, so they accounted for it, but then it wasn't accounted for on the other side?
Because we were running limited shows throughout COVID, not utilizing that Parks and Rec staff to do that work.
So why did they account for it?
I don't know if they did then, but they do now. They have the staff now to do that work.
City Manager Mitchell?
Thank you through the chair, and I understand completely what you're asking, is if Parks and Rec had it in their budget and they didn't get it, even if it's an internal transfer, why wasn't there a flag? Or why did they not just say, that's a question, I think, the clarity on, and maybe it's to Managing Director Eagert, the way the internal transfers work, because obviously Parks and Rec's revenue then would be down. And so they should say, if that was the case and they're monitoring their budget, they should say, where is that amount? So I'm going to turn it over to Managing Director Eagert to explain. No? I'm hopeful.
Thank you, City Manager. I don't know the specifics of this. Typically, you would budget revenue on one side, expenses on the other, and I think, Mayor Clark, that's the question that you have. Specifically, the details of this one, I don't know. What I'm hearing is one side budgeted the revenue and the other side did not budget the expense. So it's a bit of a misbalance there, but.
Okay, that was my question, so we don't really have an answer at this point. The next question, and this may be a little bit, maybe I don't understand the relationship, but how like the cultural center, because they have also like a theater in there, and do we work, are the staff that are doing Esplanade and Co-op Place, do they help with the programming at the cultural center, or is that mostly a relationship with the college?
We do have responsibility for a portion of the cultural center in terms of how the space is used, and that's done through rentals. There's some art studio space in there, for example, that we were responsible through one of our staff who has primarily worked with the Esplanade, but now also does rentals into Co-op Place, so we've stretched her a little bit further. So she's responsible for coordinating some of the rentals. We don't do any of the programming there.
But would we work, so sort of my understanding, and just in terms of like working when we have shows that maybe don't fit into, they're not big enough for Co-op Place or the Esplanade, is that a relationship that we are very collaborative in terms of like, well, we actually know of this other space that might work for you, kind of thing?
Sure, we've done that regularly. I do remember at times we've directed people towards Monarch Theatre as well as a possible place where they might fit and be able to utilize.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, we will vote on the motion to continue operation of Co-op Place by City of Medicine Hat administration to leverage the success realized in joint operations of Co-op Place and the Esplanade Arts and Heritage Center, and addition of $263,000 to the 2024 Community Development Budget to support staffing and services at Co-op Place and the Esplanade. Councillor Van Dyke, did I screw that up? Is that what?
I'm so sorry. I have a quick question before we vote. There's no time frame on this, and when we've previously worked with a third party, there's a contract length. And I'm wondering if there is a duration of time with this after which we would reassess. So like this is very open-ended. In a year or in 3 years, would we reassess this? Has that been discussed at all?
We will continually monitor, track, and report on our success, both through annual financial reports and our key performance indicators. But we have not set a schedule like we have not for most of our other operations in terms of when we would revisit whether or not we want to introduce a new operating model.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now we will vote. And that passes. Thank you very much to all of you for attending and for your presentation and answering our questions. Okay, so now we're at 9.1. This is the debenture bylaw 4804. And it received first reading on December 4th, 2023, and was advertised. The petition period expired. No petitions were received, and so it is on the agenda to consider for second and third reading.
Your worship, I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4802, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to increase the corporate credit card limit with the Bank of Montreal.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Hirsch?
I think it's just important for the viewing public to know we're not spending additional dollars. What the intention here is just to increase the availability, quite frankly, of working capital. So the ability of staff to exercise this, they call it a facility, but this Visa card essentially for goods and services within the City of Medicine Hat. So this is not a increase, this is just an allocation on the line of credit, so.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we'll vote on second reading of bylaw 4804. Sorry. We can still vote, yep. That's unanimous.
Your worship, I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4804.
And I'll second that.
Seeing no speakers, we'll vote on third reading of bylaw 4804. That's unanimous, and bylaw 4804 is passed. Moving on to new business, item 10.1, water treatment plant, residuals management facility, additional funding. The sponsor is Development and Infrastructure. Managing Director Bohan, do you want to introduce this item?
Thank you, Your Worship. In your package is a report to council recommending approval through administrative committee that city council approve $3.850 million for additional capital funds for completion of the water treatment plant residuals management facility. We have Engineering Manager Hussain and Director Mostway online, as well as Director Garland available in this place to answer potential questions. The reason we have this amendment before you is for a number of reasons. The original estimate for the residuals management plant was completed in 2018, pre-COVID, pre-hyperinflation, and there are known and justified reasons, and this is all outlined in your package. I'll just highlight a couple of the other main components. There was delayed construction approval from the regulator for almost a year. There were some archaeological artifacts found, and for the amount of approximately $500,000. That delay caused additional hoarding requirements over the winter of another $200,000. Steel and concrete and construction material price increases. Just steel increased by approximately 70% from 2017, and concrete's more than 100% increased. The project indirect expenses of approximately $500,000 were also not captured in the initial cost estimation. With that, I pass it back to council for consideration.
All right, let's get the motion on the table. I think Councillor Dumna, oh, go ahead.
I move that council approves $3.85 million of additional capital funds for the completion of the WTP residuals management facility.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks. So I appreciate the briefing note and the explanation, and certainly makes sense. And I hasten to add the fact that this was an ask by the government of Alberta for us to have this sort of facility. So it was kind of thrust upon us. We did our best to defer and to resist, but certainly, we got a mandate from the province of Alberta to execute on this facility. The question I had was on the original project costing, what was the variance amount that you guys used? Was it a 10% contingency? What was the contingency amount that you used, and was that all swallowed up already on the ask here?
Thank you,
Go
Worship.
ahead, Managing Director. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. If with your permission, I'd like to defer that question to Engineering Manager Hussain to answer. I believe he's online.
Yeah.
Certainly, welcome.
Yeah, thanks everyone, respected Mayor and respected City Manager. So yes, the contingency we had like 5%, that has already been used. And Managing Director Bohan already mentioned that the price increase of steel and concrete itself. And the other thing is the hyperinflation. I'll just give you one a specific example of. So initially we had $3 million for the engineering and $26.5 million for the construction. So from 2018 to 2023, so the decline in the value of money, it's like per year 3.22. So what was the value of like $26.5 million in 2018? So now the money we need to get the same value is like 32.5 million. So 5.5 million increase, but we are asking only 3.88 million. And the other thing is the project delivery model we are following here. We don't have any general contractor. So we have our own project management team. They're mostly city contractual employee. And from our group, like our director, myself, so we have taken like additional responsibility to manage the project. And that's how we are saving at least 5 to 7% of the overall cost, what we would have given to the general contractor. To answer your question specifically, so initially it was 5% contingency, and that has already been used up.
Councillor Sharhurst, you have a follow-up?
I do, and it's just more of a statement. So I absolutely appreciate and accept the rationale in terms of where we're at. The reality that I think the general public needs to understand, we might talk about inflation, and everyone was hearing numbers like 7%. It's just a runaway inflation. That's not exactly the right number, and maybe you want to comment to this in terms of construction inflation. There's a real difference between construction inflation, which means the amount of money it takes to complete a project, when post-COVID, it was almost everyone across Canada was at a starting gate starting now. So you can imagine all the contractors that have been tapped on the shoulder, asked for services, put in bids. Well, when the amount of work, obviously this due to supply and demand, with lots of demand, contractors can increase their costing on this. So we're in that world of, we've been mandated by the government of Alberta. We've already said, listen, okay, we'll do it now, and here we go. I appreciate the efforts of staff to take on the GC role, general contracting role. That is, quite frankly, a little bit of risk, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. But I certainly expect and hope that decisions made as a general contractor certainly is done with the credibility and the accreditation to make sure we're making proper decisions, because that is, quite frankly, we don't have that default when it comes to a general contractor if something was to happen. So we got to make sure that we get it right. So I'm a bit tentative on that, but I certainly appreciate the efforts, and thank you for the presentation. It certainly makes sense. Thanks.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. A couple comments and questions. So I understand the rationale behind the request and why it's here. I do have a question, though. Considering that the funding originally came from MSI funding, which is a provincial government, and that this is required by the regulator, which is the provincial government, and it was their delay of a year, which caused cost increases, have we approached them to see if they will cover the difference in the cost increases due to the fact that it was their delays that caused this issue?
Thank you. Appreciate your question, Councillor Van Dyke. Yes, we did. And the answer we received from them that the MSI grant or any type of government grant, when they approve that for a specific project, there is no option that we can go back to them and ask to cover the overage. So the option, to go back and ask for the overage, there is no option. We tried all the ventures, but if we develop a new project, and if that is within their criteria of approval, then we can go back and get the brand new approval for that portion of the project. But for any existing project, overage is certainly not been approved by the government grant.
Thank you for that information. I still am not really happy, not on the end of city staff doing the request, but that just does not seem very fair to the city to have to compensate for cost incurred due to the delay caused by the regulator. I just wanted to make one other comment. I'm actually on the opposite side of the fence than Councillor Hirsch on this one, in that when we built Unit 17, we had an internal staff which ran that project, and we came in significantly under budget, and they did a fantastic job in that. I don't know the exact numbers, but it seems to me the original budget was 66 million, and I believe we came in at something like 50 or 51 million in costs on construction on that project. So I have full confidence that our excellent staff are going to do a great job on this as well. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Through the chair, my initial question, my big question was just answered, so thank you for that, Councillor Van Dyke. It's a question I was going to ask. But I guess a spin-off to that, I was curious if the artifacts that were located during the dig, if there's any way, obviously, we couldn't have just said, oh, the heck with it, and, you know, throw them in the landfill. Was there any way to recoup through government grant money some of that expense, of that delay, or has that been answered and I missed it?
Managing Director Bohan. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll direct that question to Engineering Manager Hassan.
Yeah, thank you, and great question. And I was going to answer that question anyway. So yes, initially when we realized that there is archaeological artifacts, and according to Alberta Art, Culture, and Women Affairs, so that's our requirement. So then we went back to them and we tried all the options, whether there is any government grant which can support the expenses, and any delay, or Managing Director Bohan mentioned that just for the delay, we could not complete the construction. We just have the wrapped slab, and that has to be heated and hoarded. So additional 250. So overall $750,000 for the archaeological artifacts finding. We went back to the government, and the answer we received that it is kind of according to the law that that's our expenses. We have to bear that. There was no other government grant or any federal or provincial government fund from where we could have received this grant to cover that specific expenses.
Thanks very much. It looks like you've tried very hard to cover all possibilities. I appreciate that.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, and through the chair, I might have missed it, Director Bohan. I ran out real quick. I think I missed your preamble in the beginning. So I'm going to do the exact same budget thing. Is there a reason that we're coming in so late after the budget deliberations? And I apologize if you did answer that when I was out.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps. We were on a severe deadline to provide the budget amendment numbers, and we just simply did not have all of the information available for the deadline necessary for the budget amendment timeline. We did actually complete and I should say with a lot of effort by Director Mostway and Engineering Manager Hassan. They put a ton of effort into scrambling to get this done, even in time for the end of the year. So we did make every attempt to get it in during the budget amendment period, but we just did not have all the information.
Okay. I appreciate that. I know that this is tough. It's just, looking at it from a taxpayer point of view, there's frustration out there, and I get it, right? And just to get some clarification, when the public reads this briefing note and it says that we're getting the money from reserves, so can we just define what reserves are? Is that coming from Comco? Is that our Heritage Fund savings? If we could just define what reserves is.
Go ahead, Managing Director Bohan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to direct this call to this question to Managing Director Eager.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's from our capital reserves.
And we allocate so much to that annually?
So the capital reserves would be derived from things such as if we have surpluses from our operating, excess cash flow from various self-sustaining businesses in accordance with our dividend policy.
Such as Comco? Would that be? Okay.
For example, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had one last question when it came to acting as general contractor. I don't disagree with anybody, with Councillor Van Dyke saying that they did excellent on that unit. My question is, from a general contract point of view, normally general contractors have to put up a bond, correct? So let's just say something went wrong, would that bond put increased liability on the city?
Managing Director Bohan?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been a little bit of a ping pong ball here tonight. This question I'm going to direct, with your permission, to Engineering Manager Hassan.
Thank you.
Appreciate that question. So, from city's point of view, we are definitely acting as the general contractor, but all the risk is actually covered, even like each and every construction contract we have with the contractor. So we have bonding with them, and if we pay any advance payment, we have that even covered with a irrevocable letter of credit. So from risk's point of view, so we just have to mention, and we have our own safety team as well. So that's actually our risk. Other than that, in terms of like contractor performance and like bonding, these are all covered through the bonding and insurance from the each and every specific construction contractor.
So may I? So just to clarify, I guess my question is, if there was no risk to the municipality of being the general contractor, why don't more municipalities do that? I feel like there's a risk. Managing Director Pascos, you just smirked at me. Like there is a bit of a risk. I'm just trying to understand what that exposure is there, being the prime or general.
Engineering Manager Hassan.
Yeah. So obviously it's like added responsibility for the city, and as Councillor Van Dyke mentioned, so the same team like who built Unit 17 is doing the residual management plant as well. So from construction management, we have a construction manager who has more than 45 years of experience. And we have our safety team, and they're actually city's contractual employees. So in terms of experience and managing a project, so maybe the team we have, the general contractor would have hired people with similar experience and background. So yes, we have taken the responsibility, and it is like obviously, like from my point of view, it's added responsibility, extra time requirement, and obviously from project management experience point of view, we have managed projects, so there is always a positive side and negative side. So we are like Unit 17, we saved $6 million, and here in this project, overall, I would say that we will save $4 to $5 million. And at this stage of construction, from construction point of view, it's almost construction is 40% done. From spring, we'll start the erection of the building, and all the construction contracts have already been secured. And the contractor, they now have ordered all the materials, and from equipment point of view, we have secured all the delivery time. So we are hopeful that by the end of December 2024, we should be able to have this facility up and running. So three specific things: so equipment, materials, and construction contractor, the preparation and long lead time materials, everything, all been secured. And so we just have to make sure that we are doing our best to make sure that the contractors are doing their works safely. And like I have said, that we have our own safety team, and we are making sure that we are not letting them do any unsafe work. So I would say now that's the only specific thing, the worker safety, that we have to make sure. Other than that, all our risks are pretty much covered.
Thank you very.
So I apologize.
that's
City Manager Mitchell had her hand up.
Yeah.
Thank you, and through the chair, and as a follow-up, I think broadly and more strategically, this is why we've made changes to overall project management, risk mitigation, and put them under corporate services, so that instead of these kind of things being done on individual various bases, we have a system that we look at it and do we want to do the project management, what are the risks and the mitigations, so that we're not so siloed in different areas. It's something that will be coming in the next year or so, and it'll be corporate-wide. Not saying that everybody has to do the same thing, but we really need some type of framework to look at these things and how we do it, so that we're kind of replicating our successes. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to quickly follow up, I just want to make sure you, Manager Sun, that you understand that I'm no way doubt the talent. It's only from a risk management perspective that I question when a prime contractor or a general contractor does this on their own. So thank you.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I'm hearing the arguments. I see the background information. I certainly, from staff's point of view, not questioning the accuracy of the information in relation to the argument, which has derived a $3.85 million delta in the costing for this facility. We've all heard, and I'll say it again, this is mandated by Alberta Environment and Parks. The frustration I'm feeling right now is considerable. And it's not because of the time of the evening. The frustration is we are mandated to do this, and the models that go into, and I'm maybe simplifying, but I don't think too far off after being here a while. The models we use to cost out these projects take into consideration inflationary impacts. No one saw what was happening, but there would be consideration for that. The tone was already set. The costing of materials certainly would have been, the algorithm for developing the costing for this would have taken some of that into consideration. The parts around archaeological artifact findings, clearly no one could foresee. Delayed construction, we've had that debate already here tonight. I'm frustrated that we have asked our provincial counterparts for a cost share portion for this, and the answer is no, and yet we are just prepared to take it out of the public purse. This is nothing less than trickle-down costing back onto the municipalities yet again. I guess my concern is that we are just accepting that. I'm going to be honest with you. For me, I guess from the standpoint, if I were building my dream home and amidst the development, a contractor came back to me and said, there have been a cost deviation in this area, lumber, et cetera, et cetera. What do you want to do? Do you want to add more dollars, or do you want to shave? What do you want to cut out? What do you want to trim? What do you want to change? Square footage, et cetera. Those would be real conversations. Are we prepared to do that? Are we prepared to have that same kind of conversation to say to the province, then we are going to cut back, we're going to trim back the project? And if that can't be done, then I think we need to, quite frankly, demand a proportionate contribution on their part. I'm not prepared to lay down and play dead on this one. I guess my question to you, number one, would be, if council derived a response of no tonight, what would be your next step? Managing Director Bohan.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next step would be, we would go back to the drawing board. We would basically suspend operations. We have no funding remaining on this project whatsoever. So we would be able to complete a small, or about 50% of the electrical project, the electrical component of the project. We would not be able to proceed until we do secure additional funds from either council or the province of Alberta. So at this point, it would essentially mean we would continue a very small portion of the project and not really take any further action on the project. And with your permission, I just would appreciate actually getting additional commentary from engineering manager, just to ensure I've captured that correctly. So engineering manager Hassan, can you comment as to any other action we could take should these funds not be approved tonight?
So thanks, Managing Director Bohan. So first of all, before we asked for the extra fund, we actually went back to the drawing board and we tried for all the cost-saving measures, what we can do. Like specifically, I can give you a specific example of like changing the roll-up door and doing some design change, but that has other implication too. So, and we realized that by doing all the exercise, we could hardly save, let's say, $500,000. But eventually in the future, that may increase the operational inconvenience and additional maintenance cost as well. So first thing first, that yes, we tried all the option, whether we can just be within the budget and see whether we can cut some corners and we can finish the project within the budget allocated and was approved. So, and the other thing is, so yes, the other option could be that, so if we don't get the extra fund, the other thing is we have mandate from Alberta government that we have to have this project approved, fully operational by 2025 December. And the other thing is price of steel and concrete and other construction materials is not coming down, it's going up. So if we delay, and specifically, I can give a specific example of Managing Director Bohan already mentioned that with the amount, we will be only be able to do 50% of the electrical contract or electrical work. So the copper price has increased almost like 128% from 2022 to 2020 to 2022. And there is an indication that it's going up. So the point is, if we don't complete the project by end of this year, there is a high chance of a construction material price is going up, and that could eventually increase the overall project cost by another 5 to 7%.
Just supplementary, Your Worship. What contribution is the province making for ongoing operational costs for this residual plant? I know the answer, but I'd like to publicly state it.
Your Worship, I actually don't know the answer to that question right now, but if I can, I just don't have that answer today. I can return with it if you like.
If it's zero, is it not? I believe that it'll be our ongoing costs, and that's typically how these work, and that's why we work in concert with the province, usually on a shared costing for these, because really the burden will fall on the municipality. And I'm not trying to suggest that the province hasn't been willing to work with us in other areas, but these are the kinds of situations that really draw attention. I'm going to make the attention drawn to it tonight because it's frustrating. So just out of principle, I will not be supporting it. I would love nothing more than to, quite frankly, see the province have to, other than from bureaucrat to bureaucrat, deny increased or commensurate funding model to offset the increased costs. I'd like to see them have to speak to that defense, because simply making this adjustment without that is, in my opinion, abdicating our responsibilities for the public purse. So I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Hirsch?
Thanks, Your Worship. And we've been kind of going around this a little bit on the merits of general contractor. And with a lot of the commentary got me back to where we first started, would be the initial bid. So was the bid and the contemplation thereof, was it because I mean, what tells me is that we used to have a general contractor on this job. Is that correct?
Your Worship, no, we've taken this on. Initially, the process we went through is we hired a design firm to actually come up with this, the estimate, the scope of work, and that took place in 2018, I believe.
Because we did have alternatives in front of us that we could have got a cost-plus option versus an all-in bid, right? Which would have been on the shoulders of the contractor. Quite frankly, if they would have did a all-in bid saying, we're going to get it done for you for this amount of money, it would be on the contractor itself. Would that be the case?
Your Worship, it really would depend on what terms we negotiated with the applicant or the proponent.
Sure. And I guess it goes back to what the city manager indicated in terms of every project, we're going to look at it. Quite frankly, there is different ways that we can protect ourselves. I, for one, agree with Councillor Dumanowski, and I don't know about the protest vote, because at the end of the day, it will be likely passed, because the reality is we've got a deadline. The alternative would be what? That we've got a deadline we have to meet. We go to the province of Alberta, to which they've asked every municipality to get this done. I think, moreover, we need to talk about how we get funded in a general way, rather than the specific instance that needs to get done. So I think from a lobbying perspective, that's probably a takeaway that I have, is we've always discussed, and quite frankly, Managing Director Eger talked about the new funding model that is now indexed, depending on the rise and the increase or the decrease in terms of the government of Alberta fortunes, is dependent on how much money we get. Well, the reality is it takes X amount of dollars to keep the lights on and everything working. So those are static numbers, but yet now our grant funding is going to be erratic. So that is a higher level discussion, general to not pertaining to this specifically, but I certainly understand Councillor Dumanowski's position. But again, I see a lot of these contracts, quite frankly, and the construction is a reality. The materials on this is the heavy burden on it financially. And I'm not ecstatic over this, but the reality is, again, when you think about all the projects happening in the world, because now you're talking about a natural resource called steel that we're using, copper that we're using, everything is up. So with that, I won't take any more time on that, but that's, thanks for that.
I have a couple of questions just for clarity. One is with the briefing note just lists risk as provincial requirements to have the facility by 2025. Is that more specifically that we wouldn't be able to operate our utility? Like we would be out of compliance and we'd have to pay fines and fees likely?
Yes, Your Worship, we'd have some regulatory compliance risks that are associated with that. I think the balance of the risks were identified both in the briefing note and expanded on by Engineering Manager Hassan.
Thank you. So this is part of our suite of utilities that we have. My understanding was that our utilities are intended to be self-sufficient based on rates in an ongoing, long-term, sustainable manner. So this money is coming out of reserves. Is that because currently we aren't properly not properly, but we're not operating our utilities in a way that flags and tags money that will be needed for ongoing capital maintenance.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, we do have a working capital reserve. Essentially, we do have earnings over costs on an annual basis, and that reserve is a capital function or capital reserve that Managing Director Eager was mentioning earlier. So we draw down on that as necessary. I should hand it over to Managing Director Eager to speak to some of the money management components of that so that we can manage our available cash.
Yeah, I guess I'll just expand on my question first. So presumably we set our rates based on our costs, and some of those costs would include future capital costs so that we can continue to provide the service in an efficient manner and well-run. So is there a direct tie between these projects and the rates? So not conflating the tax money that comes in, because we have obviously limited ways of raising revenue as a municipality. So is this a direct rates-funded project, Managing Director Egert?
So I believe so, through the chair. There would be a timing issue, though, because it's collected in the future. So it would be collected in future rates. So the requirement for cash today would need to be funded through reserves, and then that would be collected in future rates.
So we don't project how much we're going to need. We recover it in the future. Is that, so it's like a loan from reserves that will go back eventually?
So it's not a loan, it's what we're asking for here is funding from reserves. The future rates would be calculated based on capital in that year or in that budget year. So we can't count future capital. We count capital that we spend in the current budget period.
But I mean, to me that I'm struggling to understand that, because you're not gonna have a residuals facility built every year, so you don't wanna collect it just in the year that you built it. So don't we have, like any business, or whether it's our electric utility or whatever, don't we build in to our rates the cost of maintaining and expanding our infrastructure?
So through the chair, yes, but we don't collect it until, we collect it prospectively. We don't collect future capital today. We collect it when it's spent into the future, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch?
I'm just going to jump on this because this is a banking question. But it's relative to, so you've got two pools of funding. One, so to your point, Ms. Mayor, you're wondering, why are we getting this from reserves? The reality is this project was thrust upon us. So we didn't have any projections to put away money on a project that was just brought to us, and now it's in our lap. So we didn't have the ability or the foresight, because we didn't know this was gonna occur, to put away the money for future. What's gonna end up happening, quite frankly, is we've got another building that we need to take care of. So now, to your point on the maintenance, there's gonna be maintenance capital expenditures. That means there'll be money have to be allocated for a future new roof, I don't know, fix some things in that building, that sort of thing, so that might incrementally, in addition to recovering the capital expenditures, might have some maintenance capital expenditures tied into that as well. But again, what's happening is the capital that is expended on this is needed to finish the job, and then will be recovered over time, because now this is another asset of part of the utility of the obligation that we have. But in a go-forward basis, it will be collected to make it whole. So going back, I tried helping out Managing Director Egert, but trying to make it in layman's terms of the fact that we didn't see this coming because it was a directive from the government but we have to find the funds, and this is an asset, it's capital that we need on an asset, so this is probably the most appropriate place to take it from. If that makes sense.
Yep, I mean, we have known about it for a little while. I just am concerned, as much as we can smooth rates so that we don't have like blips and valleys. I mean, people like valleys, I suppose, but that we don't want to have a bunch of surprises in our rates. So I guess maybe during budget time, I'll have more questions about how we're, in terms of our reserve, how each of those things is allocated or earmarked for, energy transition or those types of things that we need to continue to operate our utilities. And I don't see any further speakers, so we will vote on the motion to approve $3,850,000 of additional capital funds for the completion of the WTP Residuals Management Facility. And that passes. Next item is 10.2, Capital Project Grant Program for Nonprofit Agencies. And this is a motion from Councillor Robbins. It appeared on our last agenda as a notice of motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. I actually have two notice of motion on the agenda. I know you're only calling one at the moment, but I'm actually going to make a motion that both of these items be postponed to the February 20th council. I'm assuming we're not going to have council on Monday, the 19th, so that would be February the 20th council. I have provided background information to council. I would ask that it form part of the record, so that could be also public information, so council can get feedback by people who may choose to review that information or not. Before we have a discussion, I think it would be informative to do that process. So my motion is to postpone those two notice of motions to February 20th.
I'll second your motion, Ramona.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Would you like the notice, your background information to just appear in the package for the February 20th meeting? Or do you want them added to the minutes for this package? And is that a thing that is reasonable to do?
I think we could add them to the package for the February 20th meeting.
All right. So we will vote on the motion to postpone the items 10.2 and 10.3. And that's unanimous. Unanimous. Are there any notices of motion? No. Are there any council member reports for today? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that one of the boards that I sit on welcomed their new board members with orientation, the Medicine Hat Public Library Board. So I just wanted to say I attended that meeting. It was really enjoyable, very dynamic group for the new year. I think that's, you and I are attending a meeting coming up for Cypress View Foundation as well, but that's the one thing I did this week that I thought everyone should know.
Thank you. Seeing no further business on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned at 9:02 p.m.